Hello and welcome to another tutorial of HTML and CSS. In this tutorial, we will be learning how to work with HTML forms. HTML forms is a way of interacting with the underlying system. So you can be sending in information over to the server. Server could be taking in this information and putting it into the database or using it for other purposes. So there are two ends to the client interface building, rather I would say three. One is to code HTML, which is to generate the form. One is a CSS to add or enhance the appearance of the form elements. And third, to do the validations through JavaScript. So we'll only be concentrating on the first two steps in this and the successive tutorials that will be coming forward. In this tutorial, my main focus will be only to use HTML to generate an HTML form. An HTML form is generated with the help of a special tag called form. Now, when this form gets submitted to the backend server or needed to be validated with JavaScript, the form must be identified with a name property. So that's why I'm giving a name to this form. So I'm calling this one login form because my idea is to build a login screen. So in the login, I need four elements. I need a username, a password, a login button, and a reset button. So let me first put in the username, and I'm just creating a basic structure for now, and then I'll be adding the form elements to it. When we talk about adding in form elements, we use a special tag in HTML called input. Now, instead of creating several different tags of one for each form element, HTML developers just came up with one entity called input and gave it a property called type. And type plays a very vital role because the value of the type determines which HTML element you would like to insert. If the type is checkbox, then it'll be inserting checkbox. Radio button will insert radio button, and so on and so forth. Over here, I'm planning on inserting a text box, so I'm going to use text. Similarly, I can give it a name, just like a form can have a name. So can an input, so that a text box can also have a name. So I'll just call this username. Now similarly for passwords, I could use type called password. And I'm going to change the name to pass. Similarly, I can insert an input type equals to reset for my reset button. What reset button usually do is they are used to clear the text in any HTML form. Similarly, I can be using a submit button. By default, the submit button reads the text submit query, so I would like to replace that default text with my own text, which I can easily do with the help of the value property. But before we go into the value properties, we would now like to first of all explore to see how it looks like in the default, and then we can be going into the value property. So now let's have a look at this in the browser, and as you can see, it displays submit query. And notice how these boxes are not placed very well, they're not aligned well, because we haven't applied any of the formatting properties yet. So if I go into the submit, and now I put value equals to login, so now if I try in a browser, this is where you will be able to see that instead of submit query, it says login. So that's how you can be creating a basic HTML form that will going to interact with the user. Now there's so many other properties that you could use to enhance this HTML form. And one of the ways HTML developers put little boxes around the certain field areas is one of the reasons that they would do that is if you have multiple components on a page. Let's say if I'm filling out a long form which has personal information section, employment history, dependents. If I have several different sections, I could be creating several different field sets. So what that does when I create a field set, it wraps a region with a border. So just so that you can see, okay, this information is about one topic, and then the next information is about another topic. And then you can add a legend to each one of the field sets that allows you to put a label on each one of the boxes. So over here, if I would like to introduce field set, I will going to incorporate this entire region into a field set. And just so that you know, after applying field set, what does the output looks like, you will be able to see a big box that surrounds this entire region. Okay, so now if I put in another tag called legend login form, and now let me try this again, and you can see over here that this is where the legend gets displayed. So that's how you can be sectioning out portions in your page. So now if I would like to enhance my page a little bit, I can add some of the other tags that we have learned in the past, such as if I want to add H2, and as we have learned in the past, I could be adding some CSS style. So all of these things will going to still be the same as before. Just so that you can see how it might look like. Here I have login page, and this is basically what the field set looks like. So I could be using some more CSS properties to enhance the look and feel of this site further. Now before we go and start improving the look and feel, there's one more tag I would like to introduce over here, and that's called the label tag. Right now, the username is not associated with the username text box. Neither is the text password associated with the password box. So we use a special tag called label. Now, if you start a label over here and you end the label all the way towards the end like this, then HTML automatically understands is like this username text is associated with first name, with username. However, if you start a label like this and end it right over here, then we use a special property for a label called for, and this is where we mention the name of the element with which the label is associated with. So if you're incorporating everything in the label text as well as the input element, then you do not need to use the for. If you are not planning on doing that, if you only want to incorporate the label around the text piece, then you can mention for. That will automatically associate an element with a form element, with the text with the form element. So now if I run it in a browser, it will not going to make any difference to the look and feel. It still appears the same. It's just the underlying association of the label with the element. That's basically all it does. And just to have a little symmetry in my code, I would like to keep both labels the same way. So I'll just move this other label also towards the end, just like the first label. So I have an opening and closing label tags in the same places. So that allows everything to be incorporated right over there. Now sometimes you would like to put a asterisk to the left of the field, trying to tell that this is a required field. So we just simply put asterisks like this, and just to show you how it will going to appear for now. So it will going to just display a little star to the left of the field. Okay, you can always be doing it to the right, wherever you want to do it. Now, the question comes in, if I want all these asterisks to appear in red, I can be taking one shortcut, and that is to use a span tag. As we have learned in the past, the span tag allows you to put the text on the same line. So it's an inline kind of a text. And then I can be coming up in the embedded CSS portion, and I can be adding the property for span, and I can be putting in the color red. So now what will going to happen is when I run this page in the browser, it will now going to display an asterisk in red color. And as you can see over here, it shows an asterisk in red color to the left of each one of the text boxes. Now it is displaying it with a space because I left a space before the asterisk and then leave a space afterwards. You can always be placing this span after the element as well, so you can pretty much decide wherever you want to do it. It's your call, it's your design. And we have seen both of these implementations in different websites. Some prefer right in front, some prefer right after. So by making this brief change, and here you can see the same output, but now the asterisk has been moved to the right of the input rather to the left. And currently I'm using BR to break the row. So if I would like to achieve that through CSS, I can basically be doing that on the label tag. That's what I'm planning on doing. That wherever there is a label, that force the next element to move to the new line. So we would now like to run it again, and you're going to notice that each line that has labels that appears on a line by itself, and reset and login are automatically pushed to the new line because block contents do not allow any other element to appear on the line on which they appear. So that's another way to achieve what we achieved with the help of BR. And now we will going to incorporate some more CSS to enhance the look and feel of the page. So we're going to be starting out from here, from H2, right up top. And I would like to add some of the properties. A variation of a blue color as a background color, a variation of a blue for the text foreground color, and a text transform effect of uppercase. This is just a review for the properties that you have read in the past. And then you can also be setting the width, because if you do not set the width, it will going to show you that background going all the way across. So after applying this property, this is how the page looked like before, and this is how the page looks like now. Okay, and and then I can basically be going on to the next set of properties. For let's say I already have a property of red span. Color for the span is to be the red color. Let me go on to legend, and I can also give legend a property, some CSS properties. So I would like to change the font variant and give it the small caps. I would like to apply the font weight bold. And as a result, this is what basically you will going to see. Login form appears in bold and in small caps. And now I will be applying some properties to field set, which holds all the fields at this point. So giving it the width will allow me to decrease the size of the box. Giving a common font family will allow everything, all the text items within field set to be of the Arial. Then I can be giving it a background color and a foreground color. So after making these changes to the CSS properties, this is what I will going to get as a result. As you can see, it has given a background color to the form and has made login form, which is the legend, appear also in blue color, and everything else is also in blue color, like username and password. Now we will be adding some properties to label. We have already added the display block property, which allows the label to be placed on new line. Now, if you have noticed in the output, let me take you back to the output, that password and username are not aligned well. Password is basically a little ahead of the username. So we will be using some CSS properties to align everything up real nice. And as we have learned in the past, that we use positions, value, relative, and absolute to position the items in context. So I will be using relative positioning for label, and then within that relative positioning of label, I will be setting my input absolute position. So what this will going to do is positioning the username and the entire label as relative, we're going to put it in relative context to the ongoing flow of the page. And putting the input elements to the position absolute means within the relative context, now use the absolute reference to place it accordingly. So I will be incorporating position relative for my labels. And I would like to also give line height so that my items are a little bit away from each other and not running into each other as they are right now. And the margin property and let's see what difference this makes. And as you can see how items are placed out a little bit away from each other and a little spread out, and the position is relative, so everything is still flowing and not bumping into each other. However, the password box is still a little ahead of the other box, the input box, the text box. So we're going to be fixing that property by going under or introducing some properties for the input. And you'll be using the position absolute so that it is absolutely placed within the relative context. We'll be setting up some margin. So I would like to use the margin left to be 20 pixels to maintain the 20 pixels distance. I would like the width, which is the number of characters it can display at any given time. And I would like to position it left at 80 pixels. So now after applying these properties, you can see that my text boxes and my password box, my text box and the password box, each one of them have been placed at an equal distance away from the corner. Now what we need to concentrate on is my login and reset, which has been slightly displaced. So we will be working on fixing those now. So I would now like to introduce a class called place buttons. And this will be positioned relative to the field set for having the left position set to 0 pixels and width set to 70 pixels. And I will then be assigning this place buttons class to each one of my buttons. And here you can see after I refresh the page that all the buttons have been nicely placed. So this is how you can be arranging your form by using some of these properties. Now something very interesting to note, which I did, is to move the span now closer to the username and password as opposed to be on the other side, because anyway it was appearing on the left because of the absolute positioning. And now there's something to be done to fix a few problems, and that is, originally I had written out like this: input, and the submit button and reset buttons are also input. So they were originally taking in the absolute properties, and then I'm giving it relative properties. So it is taking some of these properties and some of these properties. So I can easily avoid this, and then I would not even have to write this class anymore. And in order to avoid it, I can basically give all of my text boxes a class called text. And then I can simply get rid of this. And this will allow my buttons to be placed wherever they need to be placed as they're flowing in. And my text boxes will automatically take the position absolute property. So as a result, this is what I'm going to get. Everything aligned nice and well. So if you do not want your reset and the login button to flow in any kind of positioning, then you can simply apply these properties to your text box and your password box. Well, that's all for this tutorial for now. We will be working on some more properties in the next tutorial. Have a good one.